The following opinions are 99% factual.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Hello, planet Earth, Milky Way galaxy, United States of America, the Miami Valley, Ohio, Midwest, area code 937. I think that's as specific as I can be. Hello, welcome to Average Joe's. Thank you, Nate Manera here, hanging out. Give us a like and a share. I keep forgetting to say those kinds of things, so I'm trying to be better at it. Not better, but 1% less worse. So thank you for joining us on Average Joe's, January 10th in the year 2020. What an exciting year, 2020. Back to back. When's the last time that happened? Probably the year 1919, I guess. Back-to-back numbers. So yes, not a lot of people got to experience that. So consider yourself blessed that you get a back-to-back number, just like Michael Jordan went back-to-back. Yes, so we are here and we have our guest with us this evening. First of all, let's give a shout out to our producer, Mr. Merle Cox. Merle, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Nate?
I've never been better except for last week.
Oh, okay.
Deal with it, Merle.
Okay.
And down here on the bottom, we have my buddy, Mr. Eric Mittler. Eric is 6'3". He was born in the year 1984. His favorite sandwich is a BLT. We met originally playing video games and poker. And then as the years progressed, our relationship evolved into discussing things, the ideas of learning how to process information. I've learned a lot from Eric, so I asked him to come on and hang out with us to discuss some things. So, Mr. Eric Mittler, round of applause. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Nate.
There you go. How'd you like that intro?
It was great.
Well, it was similar to like when they would announce the Chicago Bulls, with the Michael Jordan. Doom, 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 doom. At guard from North Carolina. But
I thought it was more like the Office funerals where you say their height and how much land they owned, and
that's right. Did anybody speak about her land? Not yet. She had a good farm. We could all use a little bit more Robert California in our lives.
I've never been uncomfortable.
That's exactly right. When I found out that Eric liked Robert California, James Spader's character from the show The Office, it just, I don't know if you can get closer to a friend without signing documents, but we got a little bit closer without having to make it legal. So, so that's common ground. I don't know. But yes, thank you for joining us on this Friday. So yes, let's just jump off real quick. Eric, what have you been up to within the last 7 days?
7 days with the holidays, mostly taking it easy. So,
any exciting news?
Found out I'm having a girl in May, little baby girl. So,
yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. I already knew we were having a baby, but we found out it was a girl, and then we're set. We're thrilled.
Now this is your fourth baby?
This will be the fifth baby.
The fifth child. Oh my gosh, you had another one. I didn't even realize you have so many.
Yeah, this will be the third girl.
Oh, okay. Congratulations again. Now, have you guys gone with any of your kids without finding out the sex, like the day of you find out?
No.
Have you ever
No.
wanted to do that?
I'm indifferent. My wife always pretends that's what she's going to do, but by the time the day comes where you can be told, she always opts for being told. So
That's exactly well. We all want to be told what to do. I think that I can agree. But yeah. Congratulations, man. I don't know. I've always
Thank you.
wanted to. I have my one child, and I've always wanted to. If I have another kid, I want to go until the day it comes out. I just think that would be so exciting to, just not know what's about to pop out of another human.
Yeah.
And Mary's aunt right now, she's pregnant. So Mary's going to have a new baby cousin here in a few months. And we were discussing that. And they found out it's going to be a little girl. But I don't know. I feel like that's like one of those once in a lifetime opportunity. You don't have a baby every day. So like I want to, if it happens again, I'm not going to find out at least, I guess if the lady wants to, but I think that would be so cool to just, bam, it pops out. And then immediately you assign it a gender and you do things that might be controversial. And you go from there. You might give it a vaccine and then assign it a gender. And next thing you know, you're a hot topic, baby.
So let me ask you this, Nate. Are you trendy enough to have a gender reveal party?
If I have a kid, I don't know. I want to see the gender reveal parties. I like them. It's cool, but I want to see them evolve into something else. It's just like a box of balloons or, there was a story I saw a couple weeks ago of a grandmother who got hit in the chest with a pipe bomb and died.
From a gender reveal party?
Yeah, nothing like saying, "Hey, we're having a girl replace the oldest girl in our family, from new blood." Yeah,
it's
I
a
like
life expectancy reveal party.
A life expectancy reveal party. If you bet today, you win. Yeah, I like gender reveals. I think they're fun, but I want to see them evolve into something, way more exciting. Like all things do, they get better. But I don't know. But I don't want to know. If I have another kid, I would like to wait until the day it comes out to find out. Do some old school style baby welcoming into the universe. So, Merle, what have you been up to?
Not much, really. Just doing the JOB thing. I mean, how exciting is that, right?
Now, have you been putting in manual labor at your JOB, or have you been reading the Old Testament book from the movie Mission Impossible JOB?
I've been going old school.
So you've been reading the book of Job. You haven't been. Congratulations.
Hey, Robin said their party was great. I don't know what that means. A gender reveal party?
Yeah, they had a gender reveal party, and I'm not going to speak on that. I think I touched a nerve last time I talked about it. So I had my opinions of it, and, it is what it is.
Right. And your brother's being mean to our guest.
I don't like the way Eric spells his name. That's fine. We're all entitled to the way we spell our kids' names. I don't know.
What do you mean, Josh?
Eric, yeah. First of all, can you mute Josh?
You have how many brothers do you have, Nate?
I have 3 brothers
that he knows
I
of.
I only know 2 of them, and I'm guessing that was the third one.
That's the secret Oregon brother that we call him Uncle Josh.
I know your other 2 brothers fairly well, but
yes, we've had Eric knows my little brother Jesse and my older brother Ben. He knows Ben quite well. But yeah, Josh was always the mysterious ghost brother where we were like, yeah, our other brother. And Eric would be like, what do you mean your other brother? I've never seen this guy or heard of him. I've never seen, does he even exist? And there he is. He showed up to critique your spelling of your name. Yeah. Do you have a name picked out for your new baby girl yet?
No, we don't. We can't decide, so we have time. We had a bunch of boy names picked out, but no girl names.
What were some of the boy names?
We like Towns and Woody, like Woodrow, but Woody. we thought people might think it was from Toy Story, so that wasn't number one on the list. But it was my favorite. But we didn't want the Toy Story connection. So,
well, if you wanted to avoid that, you could have just named him Buzz.
Slinky Dog.
Yes, this is my son, Slinky Dog Mittler. Okay, so we will jump into a couple of things that I have thought. First of all, a Japanese lady celebrated. She's the oldest living human on planet Earth. How old do you think she is?
114.
Close. 116 years old.
Now, does she have documentation that proves that?
I don't know. We did bomb Japan shortly after right before she was born or after she was born. I don't know. I can't do that math quick enough. Nope, it was way before she was born.
Yeah, I was going to say, way. You cannot do math.
Yeah, no, I can't. So she lived through, I don't know. Maybe we should demand that. Maybe the UN should demand some kind of birth certificate to, or the Guinness Book of World Records. My kid is hitting me with the daddy. It is distracting me from the oldest Japanese lady. So yeah, she turned 116 years old. So congratulations to her. I don't know her name, but she is old. So shout out Japan. An aged Japanese lady. What is it? Wagyu beef, the aged Japanese steak? Yeah, she would be. I bet you she would be a delicious meal.
I'm just laughing at the commentary in the background. Congratulations, you're old.
Hey, Peanut, can you do everything that you're doing right now? 2. Yes. Okay. Okay. So 2 guys in Memphis, Tennessee, they were arrested for trying to cash a lottery ticket that had glued on numbers.
That's awesome. Hey, A for effort.
No, man, that's a F for effort. You can't glued on. I mean, I feel like you could at least scan the lottery ticket into your computer and then edit it somehow in Photoshop. You're not going to I mean, Eric, what would you do if somebody brought in a not only plagiarized, but a horribly falsified document and tried to get money out of it? What would your response be?
What's my position of this? So do I work for the state bureau, or do I work for the gas station that's
no, that's a good question. You work for the local gas station.
I would pump them up. I would congratulate them, really get them hyped, maybe give them a free 20-ounce Mountain Dew, and just keep it going as long as I could before somebody else had to deliver the disappointment.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, because you don't want to make. But obviously they knew it was fake. So, but you're still getting them hyped up. Yeah. Oh, I can't believe this. Here, you get there's a 1 hour waiting period, but you get a 20-ounce Mountain Dew while you wait.
Or a Four Loko or something.
That's right. Yes. I wonder if so is there some kind of penalty or investigation if you cash a false lottery ticket? Like, Eric, if I came as your friend to your pretend gas station and I tried to cash a fake lottery ticket and you accepted it and paid me, would they have to prove that we knew each other? Is there some kind of penalty for falling victim to that? I wonder if that's Merle, if you could look that up. How many years in jail could I spend for falsifying a lottery ticket?
I'm sure there's some sort of fraud or attempt to defraud involved in that.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be too hard to prove it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I was a criminal who got away every time. That would be awesome. Never got caught, no matter the idea. Okay, so let's see. Taco Bell is now hiring GMs, and they're paying $100,000 a year. So I saw that trending all over the news. So if you want to really get ahead in America, go make some chalupas, or no, go manage people who will make you some delicious chalupas. Let's see. Apparently the first Jeffrey Epstein suicide attempt, that video disappeared. I saw that in the last week that it got deleted on accident. So now there's no evidence of his first attempt, and his second attempt was successful, as we all know. Here's something cool. Neil Armstrong was the first human being on the moon, and his name spelled out on documentations is Neil A. And if you spell Neil A backwards, it spells alien. So I think that Neil Armstrong was an alien, and I think that his remains are on the moon somehow. But that's exciting. That's the first time I've ever seen that, and it made me laugh. Australia is on fire, but it's arson. Apparently, is that correct, Eric? What have you seen anything on that?
Yeah, I've seen a little bit on it. Yeah, they believe that the initial fires were started due to arson. Now, there had been programs in Australia for controlled burns. In fact, the Aboriginal peoples there routinely did controlled burns that were valuable to clearing brush and other processes that are useful to them. And then they started defunding, I think, those programs, and so they're attributing the spread and the level of damage to really mismanagement of forestry, partly climate change for the condition, and then originally from arson, though.
Now I've heard those same things discussed about with California last year and the year before when they was having these bad wildfires. As far as like cuts in forestry, the Department of Parks or whatever, and they used to do controlled burns and they stopped doing those. Do you think that the kind of the misinformation that goes out with that? Because I never really, we live in this day and age where you see a news story and a headline and it's like that initial shock and you're like, oh my gosh. But then as always, as more information comes out, usually the story changes. So is that something that with Australia and California, do you think, controlled burns and government cuts, is that, do those coincide with each other? Which is a weird question, but I just think that, here in America, we've had people arrested and fined for doing controlled burns on their own land because obviously I would think that serves a purpose. So what, I don't know, talk, Eric.
As far as on their own land, I don't know that. I mean, we'd have to have a specific example. I don't know about the theoretical case, other than perhaps they were doing it out of season, where it was more dangerous to do it, or there was concern that they weren't qualified to do the burns. As for California, there are several factors. Wildfires are fairly natural and they happen in cycles, and there's benefit to them, and to some degree. We live closer to nature. There's sprawling suburbs and there's developments, and people are really concerned about things that probably would have happened anyways. But now the situation is there's damage in human life and disruption of services. The other issue in California, the accusation that PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, neglected to do routine maintenance and replacement and upkeep on their equipment and distribution services. So there's some blame on them, supposedly. I don't know. You told me to talk. That's what I got.
My man. Yeah, I just don't know where, with the climate change and everything, and allowing private companies to, like you just said, it was a PG&E, the Pacific Gas, trusting these people to do their own maintenance, or do they need to be regulated? Does there need to be somebody else there to watch them? And a lot of these, I don't know. I just think that it's funny in this day and age that in everything, not just wildfires across continents, but just news in general, man, everything is so quick to hit the system to where it's you have to really be careful to speak on things before all the details come out. I don't know, that just always It just shocks me how every time it falls for it. Every day I get on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And needless to say, 2 days later, I'm like, wow, I fell for it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
The issue with PG&E though, it's interesting. Let's say they were at fault. So you sue PG&E and they go bankrupt. Well, nobody wants that because then the residents of California don't have gas or electric. So you can't lose the power company. Then the power company, the individuals aren't necessarily responsible. So they dissolve the company and they create a new company with the same people, and they just basically rename the company, and then the new company is not responsible. It's kind of funny what the solution might be and who's ultimately held responsible, because nobody wants PG&E to go out of business because everybody wants gas and electric. But if you just rename the company to the same people no longer responsible, are the CEOs still getting, $1 million bonuses? There's no real obvious solution, but there seems to be obvious problems.
Right. The fun thing there is, where is the healthy balance between accountability and free market and regulation? As you just laid out, what happens? Obviously we need these resources and these goods, but how is that handled? So I think as a society, we're just learning and we're progressing and we're doing better as far as those things. But we can always get better. But yeah, so. Yes, shout out Australia. Good job at handling the forest fires.
I've heard that 1 billion animals have died, estimated.
I've seen a lot of regarding the koalas, and there's a lot of koalas that were rescued, which were already kind of like dropping off. But yeah, that's the big thing is it sucks that CEOs get bonuses and they're not held accountable. But the bigger travesty is, our Earth, our planet, these animals are dying off, and they're dealing with it. So, that it's hard to put into interest, or hard to put into perspective our choices that we make every day as humans, because we're so matter of fact, it's this day and age, and this is what matters right now. So it's hard to look and see what's happening because of the way we act and the way that we decide to live our lives. So hopefully we continue to get 1% less worse as a human race.
Agreed.
Let's see. Okay, real quick, Merle wanted to talk about this. Merle, I'm guessing that you have a lot to say on it. Mr. Ricky Gervais came out on the Golden Globes. Don't shake your face at me. Ricky Gervais came out at the Golden Globes, and he scorched, I guess, is the terminology that people would use. The Hollywood elite, if you will. That's some terminology people understand. So he came out and told people hey, just come up here and get your I'm sure you guys have all seen it. If you're watching this show on Facebook right now in January of 2020, then you've already seen the Ricky Gervais clips. But Merle, what was your favorite part about Mr. Ricky Gervais coming over here and giving us a little bit of that guillotine British old school style?
Well, I've always had an issue, and right, people have a right to speak what's on their mind. I mean, I've always had an issue though with these people who pretend, for lack of better words, lie, right? I mean, that's what actors do. They pretend to be somebody else. They lie about who they are to entertain us. And the fact that we give them so much credit that I really care about their political views. And I thought it was funny. I think it's, especially when Twitter blows up the way it does, that joke is funny when people get as upset as they do about this. I mean, I liked it. Again, I'm on the fence. I mean, should they be allowed to say this stuff? Absolutely, right? I mean, but do I have to sit there and listen to it or I mean, no. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I thought it was kind of refreshing. It was kind of nice because, I mean, that they are pompous people, and, there's, and it's funny because there's a lot of truth to it, right? I think the truer something is, the funnier it is. And I think he just hit the nail on the head, and they were all a little butthurt, and I liked it. It was great, and I laughed a lot, and, I guess Tom Hanks, he wasn't too thrilled, and there was a lot of cringing in the audience, but I liked it. I don't know what you two think about it, though.
I think it's well. First of all, Eric, you go ahead.
The only surprise to me is that everybody else is surprised. I don't know if they hadn't watched the first 4 times Ricky Gervais hosted the Golden Globes, because you could go on YouTube and see the best of Ricky Gervais Golden Globes, and it's pretty consistent with his general approach to it. He doesn't hold back at all. He goes for the jugular. He never apologizes. I think he's apologized once for one joke in his entire career. So I mean, I love Ricky. It was everything I would have expected or wanted from him. I just wish there weren't so many people who had to wait till now to appreciate him.
Right.
So that's a great point. Yeah, that's and you say that thing about YouTube, going on there and looking up Ricky Gervais. When I typed in Ricky Gervais Golden Globes, it brought up like 2016, 2015. And I thought, wow, okay, so this is like he's hosted this event multiple times, and clearly he's done the same thing to where people get on YouTube and look up how he's speaking about them. So The one thing I didn't like was, I don't know, we have this weird thing right now in society where it's like, oh, he got dunked on, oh, he scorched the crowd, he flamed them.
He got owned.
Yeah, he got owned. Just like Eric just said, man, this is what Ricky Gervais does. So nothing is new at all. Maybe the sensitivity might be heightened, or the awareness might be heightened to where we're paying attention to it. But he's always been like this, and that's what comedy is. And I don't think a lot of the Hollywood people were offended. I don't think it was a bunch of cringe moments. I think it was a bunch of moments where it was like, haha, yeah, that's funny because it's true. And it might be a little weird, but yes, it's hilarious. Now, of course, the cameras, they're going to catch the cringe moments. But like I always say, I don't think society is as sensitive as we make them out to be. I think we're all alike. We understand that their dark humor is a thing. And social media and television, they focus on the small minority to catch those pictures, those angles of it's so taboo. But like Eric said, Ricky Gervais has been doing this for years. So shout out Ricky Gervais, and shout out, who is it? Harry and Angela. Or no, who's the
Megan?
The kid who's Megan and no, not William. Harry. Yeah, Harry and William. They're leaving the royal family, so congratulations to them, apparently.
Yeah, and apparently the queen is upset. She's already moved photos of them from her desk. And I think their wax figures were was pulled from some museum, so.
Okay, can you blame her, Merle? If I went to my grandma and I said, I don't want to be a part of your life, of course she would take my pictures off the wall.
I don't think that's what I don't want to be a part of your life. I say good for them. They want to stand up. Now, my question is, I mean, does that mean they're going to live on their own and take care of themselves financially?
Good question.
I would assume so, and they're going to make a lot more money as a single couple than they are as a royal family couple, because they're going to make more money. My question is are they going to get that Princess Diana treatment?
You mean die in a car accident? Get killed in a car accident? Or?
Might get a little bit of exposure going on.
Oh.
If there might be I don't know. Merkel is the first she's kind of like, is she the first American to marry into the royal family?
I don't think so. Wasn't there another one? Wasn't there another lady?
I don't know, but I don't know. I think she got in there and she told old Harry, she was like, hey, let's go do some interviews like Kim and Kanye. Let's get out of here. Let's get paid. This is weird. And your grandma is a little bit off. I think that's what it was.
I don't think it's all her, though, because he was already the person who essentially came to America and married somebody who wasn't widely accepted by, the British people. I mean, he was already kind of in that zone of not really caring what people thought or holding up tradition. He seemed to, already have that about him.
Sure. That's one thing they say about the British is they are trailblazers. I don't know. I made that up. Okay, let's get into our polls real quick, and then we'll get into some stuff why I wanted to have Eric on. But I have a game for us, Eric, and it's gonna be fun. It has to do with 90s baseball. So I think it's going to be a game that me and you can go back and forth and have a little bit of fun with. But our poll results for the last week. Okay, would you rather love and lost or have never loved before? And 80% said love and lost. The people who said never love are some of my friends, which made me a little sad because I don't know, they're just cold-hearted, and I didn't think my friends were like that. But they are. So, do you like soup? 94% of the audience said yes, they like soup. And your boy Corey was the only person who said no.
Yeah, well,
I made some homemade chicken noodle soup the other day, which turned out amazing. And so I threw that up there. But I'm not a soup fan, but every time it comes across my dinner table, I'm always excited to have it. So, Eric, are you a fan of a hearty soup?
Yeah, I am. Soup, stews, gumbos, like it all.
Okay, now what's the difference between a stew and a gumbo?
You know, I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I think it's regional. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Somebody knows more than I do.
It's like
about
calling
it.
something soda and calling something pop.
No, I think there's probably an actual difference. It's maybe in how viscous it is, or the types of ingredients, or how it's served. I don't know what the requirement is, but I think they're different, but they're certainly related.
So are we talking soups and stews?
Soups and
Soups and
stews.
stews.
So the Google says, in theory, a soup is a combination of vegetables, meat, fish, or cooked in a liquid. A stew is any dish that's prepared by stewing. That is, the food is barely covered with liquid and simmered for a long time in a covered pot.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Thanks, Google. Let's see. Okay, Merle, I am so proud of you for this next question.
Oh, boy.
Is it only cheating if you get caught?
Absolutely.
87% of the audience said it's cheating if you like, no matter what. 13%, which was me and Merle, we said no. It is only cheating if you get caught. Like, win at all costs.
Right.
If you can get away with a victory and a W, and nobody finds out that you sneaked a little bit of a sleight of hand, then hey, you win.
Hey, look, like my boy
Eric?
Corey said, in a gunfight, man, if you ain't cheating, you ain't winning. So,
Well, Wyatt or Doc Holliday didn't have to cheat. But if Ringo would have cheated, maybe he would have come out on top. So that's a fair point. Eric, would you cheat to win?
At anything or anything. I guess it would depend on how much I value or respect the thing we're competing in. Like
that's fair.
if we're racing across the yard, you and me, for the last beer, I'm gonna cheat and try to trip you. Or if I'm doing something that actually I respect, you know, whether it's a job or a relationship or, you know, baseball, then no, that's more important. You can't cheat. It's a disgrace.
so do you guys
There's
ever watch?
honor. Yes.
Do you ever watch the show Survivor? Is that like too old for you guys?
I
It's just
remember when the
Survivor.
first season came out, and that was probably the last time I saw any seconds of it.
So I've
Right.
watched it. It's in entirety, and I love the show, but people and what kills me is people get upset when people playing for $1 million, and the game is about outwit, outlast, outplay. I mean, and in order to do that, you've got to lie. You've got to. I mean, I don't know if you can really cheat at the game, but I just think it's funny that people get all upset that these people will do everything that they need to do in order to win the game. I mean, you know, people are like, oh, well, you know, I wouldn't do that in real life. Well, this isn't real life, sweetheart. You're on an island trying to win $1 million.
Right. But
Yes, I agree with that.
Cheating might be paying like the cameraman to take you to a hotel every night and then fly you back to the island in the morning.
Get
So
you-
like,
get
I
you a
guess it depends
square.
on what the rules are defines cheating. Like if there's no rules, then just being dirty isn't necessarily cheating.
Right. That's right.
That's a great point. If there's no rules, then don't define my actions as
Right.
cheating or playing fair. Okay. Who would be a better president, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or Elon Musk?
The Rock.
60% of the audience voted The Rock. Eric, who would you rather see as the president of the United States, The Rock or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
You know, we creep a little bit closer to idiocracy every day. and by Merle yelling "The Rock" and you shaking
on.
your head and smiling, saying Elon Musk, it shows where we're headed. So,
Hey, look,
good
we've
job,
already
everybody.
got
Keep it
Donald
up.
Trump. How can you get? I mean, really? I mean,
Well, I
So
mean,
we don't
yeah,
need The
I guess
Rock.
you could.
so we don't need.
Yes, that's a great. Yeah.
need-
So let's go back to Elon Musk. Okay, what if Elon Musk gave everybody a Tesla? Would you then vote for him?
Not
Either of
because of that. No. That wouldn't be
No,
why.
Merle, what about you? If
no.
Elon Musk offered you a Tesla in exchange for the vote for The Rock,
They're so pretentious, the Teslas. No, that wouldn't sway me at all.
oh, there it is. You know what? For somebody who owns multiple kilts and drinks dark lagers, don't talk to me about pretentious.
Now, would I buy a Tesla? I probably would. So
Yeah, I would take the Tesla and I would vote for him, but I wouldn't vote for him because he gave me a Tesla.
That's right. I appreciate your gift, but no, this isn't the reason. Okay. Okay. When you sleep, do you sleep on your side or do you sleep on your back? 85% said they sleep on their side, which was shocking to me because I sleep on my back, and I didn't realize that I was that far out of the loop. Now, keep in mind, our polls have an average of about 15 to 40 votes, so it's not a giant.
not very
thing, but,
scientific
you know,
either.
no, it's not. But I just couldn't believe that more people don't sleep on their back. I haven't slept on my chest in years. Eric, how do you sleep? Are you a side sleeper? Are you a back sleeper or a front sleeper?
I am a stomach sleeper.
Oh,
I sleep
wow.
on my chest. Yeah.
Man, I don't know when it happened, but maybe around the time Mary was born. I used to always sleep on my chest, but I can't do it anymore. I don't know what it is, but I can't get comfortable. Maybe it's just getting older or the way my joints bend and the way I don't stretch anymore. So, but wow, old chest Eric. Okay.
Yep.
I like that. Do you think would you say that more kids sleep on their chest or their back?
I don't know. I mean, we put them on their back because that's safer when they're first born. But my kids are in every position imaginable by the time they go to sleep and time they wake up. I walk by their room and they're butts in the air, half off the bed, one leg on the floor, curled up in a ball. I mean,
that is that was the biggest shock to me when Mary started getting older and she'd sleep in my bed and I'd just be like, "What? How did you get down to that corner of the bed? You just had your foot on my chin and now you're down at the bottom, turned around, upside down with no blankets. What is going on?"
Yep.
Okay, last question. If you could own and tame a pet monkey or a pet wolf, what would you rather have? And 67% of the audience said that they would rather have a pet monkey. Eric, would you rather have a pet monkey or a pet wolf if you could tame it and train it?
Wolf. I think
A
I'd have more
wolf.
use for a wolf, and I have feelings about primates in captivity where I don't think I would own a monkey.
Well, what if you didn't own him? What if he was just your friend?
I'd be friend with him.
I'd be friendly with him. Merle, would you rather have a wolf or a monkey?
Oh, I'm owning a monkey. My grandpa actually had a spider monkey when I don't know if I was young or I might not have been born yet, but I've heard a lot of stories about the monkey, and they were friends. They hung out and drank beer and threw peanuts and slung crap at grandma. So
Nice. I
sounds
think I
kinda
would
cool.
want to have a monkey, but only for selfish purposes. And the first thing I thought of was robbing a bank. I think that it would be easy to train a monkey to commit crime, and he would be so cute and nobody would see it coming to where, a wolf's not going to walk in a bank and deposit a check, but a monkey might, maybe. It wouldn't be as weird.
There's a non-zero chance a monkey would do that.
I'm with
Right.
Eric. That's just strange.
Nate, do you remember the movie from the mid-'90s called Monkey Trouble?
Yes, yes,
with a girl owned the monkey named Dodger who had a little Dodgers hat.
yes. Was that the one? Hold on. Was that the one where at some point the monkey was in a trench coat and he had maybe a hat on, and
He
it
had a
was
hat
like monkey trouble.
There was a guy who was like a
Okay.
street performer, and he had a monkey who would go around and collect all the dollars, all the tips from the street performance. But the guy had trained the monkey to be a pickpocket, so he's going around and he's taking wallets and purses and watches and stuff. And I don't remember the story, but a girl, the monkey ended up in the backpack, and the girl ended up getting the monkey. I don't remember what happened, but I don't know. I remember that movie.
It made a whopping $16,453,258. So $16.5 million.
Wow.
Not too bad. Monkey trouble, son.
Monkey trouble. And that was
It came
Thora
out at the same
Birch.
time. It came out at the same time as Blank Check.
Oh yes, I love Blank
Well,
Check, dude.
Where the kid got hit with by the mobster, and he gave him a check for the damages, but he didn't put in an amount, so he went crazy.
Dude, what was better than the 90s outrageous movie stories? I mean, just going from Blank Check, Angels in the Outfield, the Home Alone, just all the different Matilda. I mean, nobody would send their child to a school where the lady just like throws kids in a closet filled with knives and but yeah, man, the 90s was the best at producing outlandish childhood movies. Shout out Miramax and Paramount. I don't know any other studio that did that.
Richie Rich.
Okay. Richie Rich, dude. He had a Big Mac. He had a McDonald's in his house. I got so sad, and I would be so jealous of him. And that's weird. Why, as kids, do we think McDonald's is the height of like a cuisine? I mean, a Big Mac. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. But I haven't. I can do a McDonald's breakfast sausage McMuffin and the hash brown, but I don't think I've had McDonald's lunch or dinner items in years. Maybe since the last time I hung out with Eric before we had kids.
Probably.
Yes. Remember, so me and Eric, we used to play poker with our friends, and it got to the point where there was like maybe 10 to 15 of us. And when we'd be playing, the first two people out that night had to leave and go get milkshakes for everybody down at UDF. And it got to the point where people would stop betting just so they didn't have to be the first two out, and games would last for like 9 hours. And then we stopped that tradition. So let's see. Okay. So the 90s thing, let's real quick, let's segue in. Gosh, we've been going. Okay. So Eric, I have a quick game I want to play with you. And you're one of the people I can play this game with, where
Let's do it.
we have to name 90s obscure baseball players. And this is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to name a team, and you have to name a player from that team in the 90s. And then after you name the player, you say a team, and I have to name the player. And we'll go back and forth, and whoever loses first, whoever gets stumped first loses.
Okay.
Okay, so
Is it one?
I'll
It's
go
one
with,
strike. You're out.
No, we'll let Merle be the judge. So Merle, as soon as you think that one of us is stumped to where we can't think about it anymore, then you declare the winner. Whether that's 3 seconds or 5 seconds in between your answering period, whatever it may be, but we'll let Merle decide.
Okay.
So Eric, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You go first. It's your game.
Okay, I'm going to give you a team, and you're going to give me a player followed by a team. We'll go back and forth. Okay. The Houston Astros.
Jeff Bagwell. Blue Jays.
Roger Clemens. Baltimore Orioles.
Cal Ripken Jr.
Nice.
Oh, does it have to be obscure? Brady Anderson.
Nice. First base, dude. He was in that battle with Griffey and McGuire for 1 year for the home run league.
He hit 50 home runs 1 year.
Yes. All right, give me a team.
Padres.
I don't want to say Tony Gwynn, so I'll say Ken Caminiti.
Yes, I was hoping you'd say Ken Caminiti.
Yes, the more obscure, the better. I'm going to give you. Let's go with the. Oh man, here's a treasure trove of '90s baseball players. The Atlanta Braves.
Oh, I'm gonna go with Andrew Jones because he's so underappreciated.
Wow, Andrew Jones. There were so many you could have gone with, though.
Oh yeah,
You know what?
there's a lot.
Andrew
lot of Hall
Jones
of
might
Famers.
be one of the. Yes, and he might be. That's a good point. He might be one of the most underappreciated center fielders of all time. That dude was amazing.
Yeah, he's on the Hall of Fame ballot this year. I don't think he's gonna get in, but he's on it.
All right, give me a team.
Twins.
Kirby Puckett.
Yeah.
That I don't know a lot of Twins players. Give me the St. Louis Cardinals.
Ooh, Cardinal. We doing the obscure because I was gonna go with Mark McGuire, but
As
Ozzie
obscure
was
as
in
you
there.
can. Ooh, Ozzy. Okay, I was gonna go with Ron Gant.
Ooh, Ron Gant. Yeah, Dennis Eckersley.
Ron Gant. Okay, now let's let this game transition. Let's go. We just go back
Okay.
and forth between '90s obscure '90s baseball players. You go first.
Obscure, huh?
Just any '90s baseball players. We know who they are.
Pokey Reese.
Nah, that's a good one. Nice. Okay. Fred McGriff.
Carlos Baerga.
Dante Bichette.
I love Dante. Jim Abbott.
Oh. Todd Hollinsworth.
Nice.
That's a good one.
Am I doing one more?
Yes.
I'm gonna make it good.
Make it good.
Joey Cora.
Joey Cora. His batting stance made me so mad.
He was probably the same size of Jose Altuve, I'm guessing.
Yes, dude, tiny guy. Joey Cora. Now he still he was the manager of the Mariners, right?
Was he?
Or was it the Red Sox? I thought he was a manager recently. Maybe I'm thinking of a different Central American shortstop
Yeah.
infielder.
Cora, who manages the Red Sox, was with the Astros at one point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, I love 90s obscure baseball, man. There's, basketball players and baseball players. I think I feel like I could name 200 baseball players from the 90s. If I had a pen and paper, I think I could get to 200. How many could you get to?
Just baseball?
Yeah, just baseball.
Yeah, probably around there. I could.
Yeah.
One night, Andy Smith and I did. You had to name all starting five of a '90s basketball team. We did back and forth. You had to name all five. So that I can't remember how far we went, but it was pretty impressive on both ends.
Nice. Yes, the 90s. I'm telling you, man, 90s sports was where it was at.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a couple sports things here, but nothing really nothing too crazy. I do like the guy in life who uses sports analogies for everyday life. Like when he goes to start his lawnmower and on the third try he starts it and he's like, I knew he still had one last punch in him. And like just the guy who uses like a mechanic who when he tells you the good news or the bad news and he's like, hey man, I'm not one to pull punches. So just the guy who uses sports terms but in everyday life. I was laughing about that this weekend and I just thought that I thought about telling you and I just told you, so deal with it.
Thank you. That was a home run. A real hole in one.
That's right. That's a real hole in one. Okay. So I wanted to have Eric on tonight to discuss some things regarding the upcoming election season in the Electoral College and kind of early American history. Eric is one who I find his social media and just his interest to be very interesting, oddly enough. And I really appreciate his enthusiasm with early, I don't know, I think of it as American history. I'm sure he'll maybe dive into that deeper. But I wanted to have him on to talk about that because it's 2020. I don't know why I looked at my paper to think of the year. But yeah, I wanted to have Eric on because he's kind of a connoisseur of history and just a baller human being. So Eric, before we kind of get into this, can you give people with Instagram or Facebook some of your pages that you can maybe suggest if they're interested to go into following or looking into some of the things that you post and some of the cool things that you partake in?
So I do American history. I do seminars at Wright State now. My master's degree is in history, early U.S. history, so up to about 1840. And I'll be a PhD student next year in American Studies. I do have a Facebook page where I do early American history. My specific area of research is frontier relations and economics. So you think European and Native, that type of dynamic. I have a page called The Frontier Life on Facebook, which I post. I don't do big essays or blog type posts, but if I come across a cool picture or something in my research, I throw it on there, and I post them fairly regularly. So The Frontier Life has a lot of my history stuff early, mostly again frontier history. So if you like cabins and Native Americans and Daniel Boone and mountain men, that type of thing is The Frontier Life.
Okay, so yes, go look up The Frontier Life and give my boy Eric a like and follow and all that. Hey, speaking of Daniel Boone, besides David Crockett and Simon Kenton, is there another frontiersman out there that you like that doesn't get the credit he deserves? Sure.
Simon Girty, in fact, the Girtys in general, Benjamin Logan. It's interesting. Daniel Boone has become a huge, larger than life hero in American history, which was largely by chance. He was a very capable frontiersman. In fact, he was a captain. He was named a captain for a certain amount of time. He didn't end his career as a captain, but he was a part of a larger group that moved through the Cumberland, moved west, eventually all the way to St. Louis. Most historians generally agree that he wasn't the most capable frontiersman even in his group. We know about Daniel Boone because that's sort of some of the stories that survived. There was a guy named Draper and Doddridge who the stories and accounts of the early days in the Cumberland were recorded and published by the Historical Society of Wisconsin in the Draper manuscripts from Doddridge, who went around Kentucky and Tennessee and Missouri in that area and recorded stories about the earliest recollection of the frontiersmen and the pioneers who came to that area. So this was in the 1800s, so people remembering in the late events from the late 1700s. And those accounts were published, and Daniel Boone became famous because some of the neighbors remembered Daniel Boone, and those were the stories that they passed on. But better records, primary sources from the time would suggest that Boone was good, but he wasn't the sort of the one-man show that he's made out to be. There were likely far greater feats and frontiersmen and better shots and better Indian fighters and all that just are kind of lost because their stories happen to not have been the ones published in the Draper manuscripts.
Which is, you just said something. That's why I love talking to you. The stories that live on. Yeah, man. If your friends or your ancestors die before those stories are recorded, then somebody else's stories are going to live on through generations and have this folklore, if you will, kind of about them to be, because I had never heard of Simon Kenton until into my early 20s when I read The Frontiersman, and that was my first exposure to him, because to me it was always the songs of Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone, and I was like, whoa, there are so many more people throughout history that I have no idea about, that I didn't learn because they didn't have a catchy tune tied to their name.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting, man. Throughout history, whoever's legacies carry on, that's whoever survives, and they get to write history for the most part. But yeah, yes, thank you for that. Where do you rank Simon Kenton on your Frontiersman list?
He has some of the better stories, especially up here in our area of Ohio. His captures and escapes, his run-ins with other frontiersmen. Certainly top 5. For his
Top
period.
5. Okay.
For his period,
Who's your
yeah.
goat? Who's your goat frontiersman?
I like James Beckworth. He was born a slave in Virginia. He had a white father and several brothers and sisters. It's not common, it's not uncommon for white slave owners to father children with slaves, consensual or not. His is a unique situation where his father and his mother seem to be in love, or a couple, where the white father moved the slave mother and all their children. I believe they had 7 children, and they moved west. He gave up the plantation, gave it all up moved west, made sure his children, who were considered mulattoes, really third class citizens at the time, all went to private school. He got school. Beckworth ended up becoming an apprentice at a blacksmith. He became a fur trader, a mountain man. He became a Native American chief. He had several Native wives. He worked all over the West. He was a really successful businessman. He was a guide, was a local politician. So James Beckworth is, he had bear fights and all the glory that you want from a frontiersman. So I would say James Beckworth is my favorite.
Bear fights, man. How sissy are we? We're tiny babies and we're defenseless. Bear fights. And that's something, I don't know, dude. I went to Dayton Christian, and I love my education and all that, but I don't know if it's just me and the school I went to, or if it's the school system in America in general. But I learned so much more about history and just early America once I started looking into it, and those things weren't taught, to where Ohio was the West back in the day, and it was the frontier in Kentucky, and this was completely undiscovered territory. And just thinking about the people who had the balls, the courage to pack up and keep pushing until they met resistance and go from there. It's just, man, I get frustrated if Call of Duty doesn't load up in under a minute. And I can imagine having to say, hey, there's a waterfall. Oh, there's a mountain range. Well, this is going to take 3 months for us to clear this. Nah, bro, I'm going back to Boston, where there's at least some food and like a town that's set up.
A tavern.
So yeah, right, a nice tavern to go to with my kilt and ask for a dark lager like my boy Merle. So okay, Eric. I want to ask you about the Indians, the Native Americans. Kind of today we see this, we have this idea of cowboys and Indians. We have this idea of Indians being, the non-aggressors. But the more you kind of look into it, like all civilizations and all humans, the Indians had the Indians' savagery. Do you think that the Indians were more savage than kind of what people tell, like we kind of think about them, some of the things they did, and can you kind of talk about that? Because I don't think we realize just how many tribes there were and how many different really gangs there were of Indians.
Yeah, so there were from pre-Columbian times to throughout the 18th century, about 500 different tribes, roughly in that 500 range, and they were all different. They're all unique. If you say savage, or some are fierce, or some are this, or some are X, some are Y. Each one's different. Just kind of like the Irish are different than the Jewish people are different than the Germans, are different than the Italians, and they viewed themselves as separate people too. Now looking back, we tend to think of, okay, well, there were European people that came here, and then there were natives who were here, and we kind of there are civil rights groups that represent all native groups, and there are native issues, but the natives wouldn't have seen themselves as a united group. Like the Huron didn't think that the
Right.
Ottawa and them were any closer than the Huron are to the Dutch, which is one reason why the natives never really united against Western expansion, or against broken treaties or bad trade deals or something, because they didn't see themselves as one monolithic group. Each tribe, the Cherokee were the Cherokee, and the Iroquois were the Iroquois, just like the French were the French. They didn't see any reason why they should be more friendly to other native tribes than other European nations, which probably to their detriment in hindsight. There were times where small groups did band together in unusual ways, like Pontiac's Rebellion, but they were really outlier situations. From the very beginning of contact, some tribes developed relationships to Europeans that they were living near, and they developed trade, and then those Indians became middlemen for the ones that lived further west, and they would take European goods and they raise the prices
Right.
and trade them inland for furs, and they trade them back. So they were in competition with each other, and they were allied sometimes with other native groups, sometimes with European groups. And that's why, like the French Indian War, 7 Years' War, there were Indian tribes that were allied to the French, and there were ones that were allied to the English. When 100 years, 120 some years later, when the U.S. Army wanted to track down Geronimo, who did they hire? They hired other Native Americans. They didn't see themselves as a group. They were their own nation. They were their own race. They were their own culture. So that being said, so they were all different. Some were more agricultural, some were more aggressive, some relied on diplomacy, some were warlike, some were horse people, some were a fishing culture. They really ran the gamut.
Right, and that's something that there's this when I talk to people, and I try not to cast judgment on people for believing things that they're taught or whatever, but it seems like for some reason there's this narrative that the Europeans showed up and just slaughtered all the Indians, and that the Indians were just peaceful and they had their hands open, ready to accept them or whatever it may be. And when that originally, because that's kind of what I was taught, that we just showed up and killed all the Indians. And then when I started reading about the Comanches and these different tribes that would, they were vicious, show up and rape and murder and take other Indian tribes as slaves, and it just kind of brings back the classic narrative of humans are humans, and whoever's in power makes the rules, and they get what they want. But I think that's America is very young, and it's hard for me to think of the year 1514 and the Dark Ages and Middle Ages and all these things, because America is so tiny and we're such a young nation. And Joe Rogan had a joke in his last special that made me laugh so hard. We are essentially 3 Japanese women away from Indians in America. We are very young. We are less than 300 years old. So we have we're like 2.5 humans away from where it was a completely different America, and it's hard for us to put into perspective all of the pain and the suffering and the hard work that went into building this nation to what it is today. Whether you agree with it or not, this experiment of America, I think, is working out, for the most part, pretty good. And it's kind of hard to take a step back and look at that history, because we can't put ourselves in that situation where we have to go walk down to the river and get water every day, and go search for our food, and to raise our food, and to protect our homesteads and against wildlife. We live in these cities that are, they're pretty protected. I have some coyotes and raccoons that occasionally run around Moraine. But for the most part, people lived, with bears and wolves and boars and all these different this crazy. And it just I think we need to do a better job as far as taking a second to look at where we've been and where we've gone as a nation. But yes, so getting into the Indians and stuff. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, what's your opinion of Christopher Columbus? Do you think he was a mercenary who was doing a job for Spain, or do you think he was just a vicious person? Do you think he was a good guy? Growing up, we have the elementary songs, but then as you get older, you're like, oh, maybe he wasn't the best person. But do you think it's good that we are trying to erase, or do you think that we're trying to kind of change that, or just expose the truth of who Christopher Columbus was? And, was he as bad as people are kind of now saying he was, or can you blame him for the position he was put in?
So it's complicated. He did perform an achievement, or give us an achievement, in accidentally discovering the Caribbean and ultimately North America. So that is, somebody had to do that, and most of us benefited in some way because of that. It was also inevitable that we find the other continents on our planet. What did he also bring? Some large amount of misery to a large section of the population of Earth? Yes, he did. Would he have chosen that other than being in the service of Spain? He wouldn't have necessarily, but he also wouldn't have recognized why we recognize that was wrong. At the same time, it's important to remember that if I was born in Spain in 1450, my views wouldn't have been any different. Right. And neither would have. I mean, that's just, we live and we learn, and none of us are responsible for the ideas that we're born into. But we're also, I think, have an obligation to learn what we can and recognize the bad things about Columbus in order to, we don't do that to get revenge on Christopher Columbus. We do that to retain the knowledge of, hey, we're going to do 1% less bad going forward.
Right. Very well put. Exactly right. I'm not trying to disparage the name of Christopher Columbus. We're just trying to say, hey, let's learn from our mistakes, and let's, to make it so that doesn't happen again.
I always point out that, a lot of people get mad if you point out things that, especially in history, whether it's the Confederacy and the statues or Columbus Day, whatever it is. And I'm on one hand sensitive to those, not because of what it means to those people in the past, but what it means to the people now and going forward. But at the same time, I also realize that there are things that I do in my life today that people in 200 years are going to look back and go, can you believe that guy was doing that kind of stuff? And I have no idea what that's going to be. So I try to have some measured approach where I'm not going to, I want it to be kind of an even-handed accepting of that. I don't necessarily blame people personally, but you have to put everything in context. But there is, I think, an obligation to do better.
Yeah, there absolutely is an obligation to do better. That's what we as humans, I feel like, have always strived for. It's just it's hard for me to struggle. All the work like that. You just said the Confederate statue. So I asked some of my friends and coworkers different issues that they would, if they could talk to you about. And one of them was like the Confederate statues. Do you think it's good that we take them down and we get rid of them? And I thought, man, I think it's good that we are moving forward and we're recognizing that maybe those people shouldn't be honored. But I also, if I was in his position at that time, I can't say that I would have thought any differently. So, like you said, we're all products of our environment and our own beliefs that we're brought up in. So should we destroy them? I don't think so. I think maybe we should put them in a museum and use them as education purposes. But like you said, man, we do have an obligation to get better and to continue to evolve as humans and just trying to be better, because contrary to what we see, this is the most peaceful time to be alive, I would say. We all have a lot of, we're very blessed to be in this time right now. I could have been born at any time and throughout history. And I'm happy it's 2020 because I get to hang out in my house and talk on a computer screen with two people about how hard things used to be. And I don't have to actually do it. So, but perspective, yes. Just realizing that, like you said, I can't say that if in the 1400s, if I was in Spain, I wouldn't have taken the job that Christopher Columbus had. I'm sure he was a rock star back then, man. He's an explorer, dude. Let me get your autograph, son.
Yeah, and I'm going to do something tomorrow that people 400 years ago or from now are going to be horrified by, and I don't know what that is. I couldn't tell you what it is.
Exactly. That's true, dude. You could like go wash your car tomorrow, and in like 400 years, they'd be like, "Why was he washing that machine?"
And
why did it have that machine? I mean, what were they doing? Why'd they have cars?
Right. And they may have good reason. I only have the information I have.
Right. Okay. So, kind of going on that, the whole cultural things, I wanted to ask you about what did you think about Donald Trump's tweet about going after cultural sites in Iran and, putting that out on Twitter. I like, as people know this, I like some of the things that Donald Trump has done as far as policy and things that I feel like helps our country. But I when you're tweeting out threats towards other people's religious sites is what they quoted, but let's not, like you just said, that's history. So what did you think about our president talking about that?
Well, they weren't just religious sites. Many of them predate any current religion. Zoroastrianism is actually the traditional religion of Iran. It's now a Muslim country, predominantly Muslim, but many of those sites are, non-Muslim sites. They're historical sites. The biggest thing is that those are also civilian sites. That's where the public is. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but those are by definition war crimes to target World Heritage sites or any civilian location. So I think. I mean, I don't know if he actually planned on doing it or if it was just, some sort of,
Sure.
He had some parallel purpose in doing that. I can't speak to that. I think it would be a shame if he did it, and I think it would be considered a war crime.
Yeah, I think history, just kind of over what we've been discussing, just how important it is on who gets to write history. And Daniel Boone has songs written about him because of who was, who survived to live that. And whatever it may be, maybe your boy Benjamin Logan was, maybe he pissed off a couple people and they were like, you're going to be forgotten in the history books. We're going to name a local Preble County school after you. And that's all you get, son. But yeah, I just, that wasn't something that I thought was a good idea. But backtracking from that, I was looking at my notes and the cultural impact of things, and that kind of drew me to that. But I wanted to ask you some questions, Eric, about our voting process in the United States.
Right.
Kind of what was the reasoning behind the Electoral College, and what are the pros and cons behind that, and then we'll go from there into some different questions.
Well, the pros and cons, you and Merle might have to hash out. I can give you like a quick kind of context or background to it. So in 1787, at the very end of the American Revolution, the colonists and our founding fathers, as they're often referred to, had a constitutional convention deciding what's the best way to run our own new country. To this issue specifically, there was a jurist from Pennsylvania named James Wilson who advocated with the other colonies that there should be a direct national vote. So one vote for the president, kind of a popular vote. And then from Connecticut, there was a Roger Sherman who believed that the Congress should pick the president. The issue was ultimately decided with the argument from James Madison in the Federalist Papers that he wrote that year. And then so in 1789, when the Constitution was written, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3 had this electoral college. They called it a electoral body. So it's a mix of Congress, so politicians, and sort of the voice of the people. And it was kind of a compromise, but also a fail-safe, like one wouldn't have a monopoly over the other. There were some arguments for this, and kind of just paraphrasing Madison's 6 points real quickly. One is a sense of a people, so not an official body would pick because people are at the ballot, they're casting a vote. That as little opportunity for tumult or votes. It's pretty clear. It's hard.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second, Eric. Can you repeat that second point? We kind of lost you on Skype a little bit.
Yeah, his Skype is frozen, it looks like.
Okay.
Is
Hold
he
on.
back?
Let's
Nope.
wait for it to load up.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's see.
Wait, we'll give him a second here. I will.
We'll give him a second, and
yeah, I'll monitor
hopefully that
him.
catches up.
Right.
Yeah. So, like Eric said, man, the end of the Revolutionary War and the way that the system was set up, and just that, the ratification of the documents, the Federalist Papers, James Madison, these young men and who set this up were, it was a 20, because the Federalist Papers were drafted, but the Constitution wasn't ratified until, the 1790s, I believe. So you're looking at 25 years of just working through different things to try and get people on the same page. And the fact that we, that must have been an exciting time. We see our Congress today and Nancy Pelosi worrying about impeachment things and war crimes and whatever it may be. But these guys were setting up a nation. And I'm sure there was some heated debates and spirited debates back then on what was the best way to go. We had Thomas Jefferson was a lawyer. We had doctors, we had generals, we had lawyers. Benjamin Franklin was the first person to sell insurance, fire insurance. So we had a bunch of different people from different walks of life trying to get together and set up this system of electing a leader. And that's a whole different discussion. But whether or not the president is still a valid position. We have the Congress, we have the Supreme Court, but I think as we get, back then we kind of needed that as a sole person who kind of had the voice of the nation. But now I think it would be better if we had more of a committee by intelligence that could kind of make the best decisions. But for someone like me, you think that our president has a boss and he's not actually in charge. So what's up with Eric? We got him back yet?
Not yet. He just hung up and he's trying to call back in, I think. So bear with me.
He's calling back in. Okay, no problem. Let's see. I had a couple things I could just. Oh gosh, where'd it go? Okay, well, it's Friday night. It's exciting. We're learning some early American history and into the Electoral College. And I think that it's important that we understand why we have the Electoral College. We have each state is given a certain amount of points, and we'll get into Erica regarding the popular vote in the Electoral College, if it's really necessary to have differences and why there's a difference. Somebody asked me why if the electoral college votes are the only one to matter, why even release the popular votes? And how many times, is it more often than not that I think it's only happened twice, right? Merle, maybe you can speak on that, to where the person who won the electoral college vote didn't win the popular vote. Usually they coincide pretty good together, but there's reasons for that, as we're kind of seeing today. When you have cities like New York City and Los Angeles and Chicago, where 25%, 30% of the country lives in, it's not a good idea to let those people to determine. You put yourself in a box as far as a thought box, to where everybody thinks the same, everybody feels the same. And I think we can understand that from different parts of the country, it's important to have different belief systems and different ideas reach the mainstream. So when you have the majority of the population only living within a few cities, a few areas, you can kind of get bogged down with the same ideas and stuff. So I think that's why that's important. But Eric, I believe that Skype gave us the old okie doke when you were on your second point. Are you back?
Oh, I can't hear
He
him.
is he's incredibly still.
Is he still? I can see him. Hold on.
I can see his frozen picture.
He's winning the mannequin challenge.
He is. He's winning the mannequin challenge.
Eric?
Yeah. Can you
There
hear
we
me?
go.
Oh,
Yes.
there he is. Dude, you were
Hello.
so frozen. You were so Elsa all over
Skype gave us the old Heisman for a while. It's like, what?
Right.
Okay, so it started acting up when you were getting into your second point regarding Mr.
Okay.
Madison. And go ahead.
I'll condense it. So Madison saw benefit to there being really it being by district. So in most cases, so the Constitution calls for this body to assemble every 4 years and pick the president and the vice president. Now, you got to remember, early on, there wasn't these two parties and there wasn't a presidential ticket with a president and a vice president. People voted. In fact, you got 2 votes. If you were one of these electoral college members, you got 2 votes. Each person got 2 votes, and you could give 2 to one person or split between 1 and 1. And whoever got the most of the first place became president, and whoever got the second most became vice president. So there was this party ticket. So it was really by district. You were kind of talking about cities and countries and neighborhoods and cultures and stuff. And that was kind of the idea. Remember, back then, politics was local. There's always that phrase, all politics is local. There used to be, back through the 19th century, you could go to the White House. You could walk right into the front door of the White House. I mean, you could go in and tell President Garfield something if you wanted to. Now, most people couldn't even get their local state rep on the phone if they wanted. They'd get a secretary, or they'd leave a message, or they'd get some intern or volunteer. So that's part of the difference. So anyways, you go back then when politics was local, the president was thought to be mostly restrained by the Constitution. So this idea of, oh no, so-and-so's president or so-and-so's going to be president, to these people, it wouldn't have made much difference because they already wrote what the president can and cannot do. And they, as far as they could tell, they've come up with a pretty restraining Constitution of,
Let me cut you off real quick.
Okay,
There.
Yeah.
It feels like that's always been the case in this country until the 60s, 70s, when we started changing. What happened to where we started getting rid of the Constitution that prohibited the president from doing things, and allowed the president to more. Is that just a convenience thing? Was that just a power thing? Why did we get rid of some of the people talk about the Patriot Act and the Fourth Amendment? We talk about the war crime? What's the
War crimes
presidential
provisions.
powers?
Yeah.
The Presidential Powers Act of, I think, 1979 that allowed the president to allow so many troops or to do something without Congress's approval. Why was that just like a streamlining effort to give the president more power to where we didn't have to bog ourselves down if we absolutely had to go to war, or if the country was in trouble, the president could do something? Or what? Because like you just said, back then nobody cared because the president was checked. He had a list of rules he could follow and a list of things he could do to where, it wasn't a big problem. And shout out America. It's still kind of like that. We still have a balance of power between the three different branches. But why were those things taken for? Why were those things gone away with as far as the Constitution?
I think it's twofold. I think on one hand, it's issues or risks and concerns that aren't explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, or the degree in which, for instance, the war powers. Well, it makes sense for Washington and Adams and Madison and Jay to people like, well, the president can't. Back then there was this real concern of a standing army, and we have a whole amendment on quartering soldiers in time of peace. To raise an army and to get them on ships and to train, just to launch a war took 18 months, to mobilize troops. Now you have to respond with, if there's a surface-to-surface missile in the air, you got to 40 seconds before they want to know what's happened. And so a lot of it is the concern that maybe the Constitution isn't up to date or isn't clear what you should do in the situation. And then you find a solution that kind of falls in a gray area of the language or how things are interpreted now based on hundreds of years of evolution of language and then interpretations of various Supreme Courts. And it kind of just gets whittled away where it's not clear that you've moved the line when you do it once, but after you do it 50 times, and then you can kind of maybe see the line is a lot further than it was. We're better and worse on things. There's certain things that the public doesn't really care about. A lot of it's administrative things. And then there's things that people get really heated about, civil rights things, or where the Supreme Court rulings are still, front page news, or, whether it's a free speech or a freedom of association or gun rights or something. So I don't think it's all or nothing. I think it's kind of just the line gets moved in this gray area. And at the time we're doing it, it doesn't always appear that we're moving the line.
That's a great point, because like you just said, man, you can move it a little bit, every year. Oh, well, that's not going to make a difference. But then after, 60, 70 years, and you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, we're a mile from where we were. And that can, that can change some things.
And you might not even know that you were moving it originally. You just like, well, there is no line, but we have an issue. We got to solve it. Well, let's draw a line in this gray area that we think is the best right now. And then, so you might not even know you're moving the line when you're moving it.
Right. Do you think that first of all, I had no idea that back then you got whoever got first place votes was the president, and whoever finished second was the vice president. I kind of like that idea. I think that's a good idea. I think it would be funny to watch Donald and Hillary hang out in the White House and try and get along, and who would be I think that brings the ultimate balance of what we want when you have one from each side. And I'm not a big fan of Congress doing anything, but I think if they made that constitutional amendment, I think that would be cool, because I think that would do a lot to drive down the discourse of the public thinking that we're so divided, saying, hey, one of you guys are getting in and the other one's going to be right there to make sure you don't get weird. I think that would bring a little bit more of a reasonable discourse to the White House and our nation in general. And just in better, it's good to have representatives from every different, like you said, the gun rights people, gay rights, people who are for abortion, people who are for religious freedom, people who think that we shouldn't be policing the world. All these different. It's good to have open the conversation for that. But what? So moving into, go ahead.
I was going to just mention that. Also, keep in mind that back then, when they wrote this, when they were crafting this article, it wasn't a two-party system. So they actually anticipated on. So not only was it not a two-party system, not all the we call them now delegates and superdelegates, all these elector votes that happen to be in a state didn't all have to go to one candidate. Each one was an independent voter. So right now, we only have 2 states that break up their electoral votes. Maine has done it since the 70s, and Nebraska has done it since 1996. Those are the only 2.
When you say break up their electoral votes, what does that mean?
So, for instance, right now, California is worth 55 electoral votes towards the Electoral College. So you need 270 to have a majority to win the presidency. Well, when the founders wrote this, not all 55 have to go to Hillary because it's a liberal Democrat state. Maybe a lot do in San Francisco, but maybe there's cowboys in California, or there's wine country, and then there's inner city, and then there's beach bums. You could split these up. Some could go to Trump, and some can go Libertarian, and some can go Hillary. There wasn't this two-party system. In fact, I believe that the founders likely figured that there was a fair chance that people would regularly not get to 270 because there's multiple people running, and the electoral votes are getting distributed even, not what they call at large, which means all of the votes from the state go to one candidate. Although they started going at large as early as the first election with Washington in 1789, and then by 1804 it was pretty common, and then since 1836 it was been that way, where all the electoral votes from a state go to one candidate until Maine in the 70s. So just 40 years ago, changed that. So the way it was designed kind of failed from day one, where everybody just loved Washington, so they gave them all to Washington, and that he kind of set the precedent.
Right.
So they actually designed it in a way that if nobody got to 270, the House of Representatives got to pick. In fact, that's how John Quincy Adams got elected. In 1824, he did not win the popular vote. He won the House of Representatives vote. So Madison's view was like, well, if the people can't decide and nobody gets to 270, then Congress, the House of Representatives, could vote. That was his kind of mix in the Federalist Papers. And there's been 5 times when the winner of the popular vote did not also win the Electoral College. Andrew Jackson actually beat John Quincy Adams in 1824. William Tilden beat Rutherford B. Hayes in 1876. Grover Cleveland, who also later became president, lost to Benjamin Harrison in the Electoral College despite beating him in the popular vote. And then Al Gore won in 2000, and Hillary won the popular vote in 2016. So those are the 5 times it's happened. Which is unusual because Madison would never have predicted that. He thought that, well, you got so many parties. You got Constitutionalists and Federalists and Northern Democrat and Whig, and that
right.
Nobody. They would really have to have the love of the people to get 270. And if the people can't decide, then Congress would step in. So it's not the system that they designed it to be in 1787. And not
So I don't.
So we still use it, but the votes are at large. There's only 2 parties. The ticket has a vice president and president. The loser doesn't become president or vice president. So many things are different than how it was originally conceived.
Merle, can you look? When was son of a gun? I just had the question. You were talking about the popular vote in Hillary and Al Gore. Winning the popular
Chads,
but losing the Electoral College. The hanging Chads, dude, the hanging white guys. What a great, fun news headline that we had back in the day. The delegates. Has there been a time where, because I didn't care about politics. I thought that Bill Clinton was the president. He was the president. George Bush was the president. And then George Bush Jr. was the president. And they're the president. Of course they care about America and they have our best interests at heart. And I didn't understand really politics in general until I started following Mr. Ron Paul. Shout out Ron Paul, my buddy. That's when I started to kind of look into the laws and stuff and learning that delegates have the power to override the vote. So here in Ohio, if we voted for Donald Trump, but the delegates decided they wanted to give all their power to Hillary Clinton, then that, or all the votes, the Electoral College to Clinton, they could. Has that happened in any kind of recent history where a state went against the delegates went against their popular vote to give those votes to the a different candidate?
Not since, well, no, there hasn't even been a time when a whole state didn't vote for somebody other than since the 70s, since 1836. So no.
Okay.
As far as no, none have ever been anything else than what they call at large. Yeah, where there's no defectors. Yeah.
Okay, so if you could, we hear this language as far as the Electoral College is a dinosaur, and it's old. It's meant for the way things were back then. Like you said, it was the first and second place. There was no political party. You look at other countries and they have 6 to 10 different parties, and we have our Republican and our Democratic. For those of you who are followers of Average Joe's, I don't think there's that big of a difference between those two parties. I think they serve a different interest, which, may come down to why these laws were put in place and why there's been no room for expansion for a third party. Ross Perot, as far as my knowledge, was the kind of the first introduction into a third party. But why is there, in your opinion, is the Electoral
Lincoln was a third party candidate.
He was a Whig candidate, right? Or Whig party?
Lincoln was a Republican. He was a third party candidate.
Okay, so he
only got 39% of the popular vote.
So then, walk me through that. How did he get the presidency with getting 39% of the popular vote? Because it was more than 33. Because he was more than
there were 4 major parties at the time. He had the most at 39%. Nobody had more than 39%. Right. John Breckinridge had 18%. Stephen A. Douglas had 30%, and John Bell had 17%. So Lincoln's 39% was the most, even though it was not. He did not get anywhere near 270 electoral college votes.
Okay. And something that just popped in my head.
He did get the 270 votes, but not. He only got 39% of the electoral or of the popular vote. Pardon me.
Okay. And I got one thing I want to write down here for. Okay.
One thing that's worth mentioning is the 14th Amendment, which was in 1868. That really, the point of it was to punish states that if states wouldn't let certain people vote, in this case, black people or slaves, that they would lose the amount of electoral votes that their state carries. So it's like punishing California now is 55 and say, well, you lose 5 because you've disenfranchised X group.
Okay.
So that's actually what the 14th Amendment, the purpose of it was, and that's when the 3/5 clause came into popular use. A lot of people don't understand the 3/5 clause. They think, oh, well, like they use it kind of derogatory, or saying like, well, you guys only thought black people were 3/5 of the person, which is actually the opposite. It was the pro-slavery South that wanted slaves to count as a whole person because they couldn't vote, but they counted in the number of people in population. So those states got more representatives in Congress because they had a bigger population. So let's say Alabama would get more congressmen because they had a lot of people in Alabama. Even though half of them were slaves, they count as a whole person. Therefore, and they can't vote, Alabama gets more congressmen. It was the North, or mostly the anti-slavery people said, no, that's not fair because you're counting slaves that you don't even allow to vote. And they said, so the compromise was actually to only count as slaves as 3/5 people. So it was actually you might look at it as the anti-slavery people who wanted slaves to count as 3/5, and it was the pro-slavery group that wanted slaves to count as a whole. So it's kind of counterintuitive
Right.
than what most people think how it played out in history or why that's significant in history.
Right. And that's a great point. Is you hear different things, but then when you look at the history behind it, there's a reason behind. Even though it's like Eric just said, it counterintuitive to where the pro-slavery people were like, "Well, no, we want our slaves to count as like goods, like commodities." Whereas the anti-slavery people were like, "No, they're not actually humans. They only count as 3/5." That's what. Well, Mr. Abraham Lincoln, that gets into the whole. That's another discussion. But we will have. So, do you think the Electoral College is still relevant today? And what safeguards does it protect us from as a country in 2020?
It's not relevant because it doesn't do either of the concerns of Madison. It's not a mix of the popular vote in Congress. It doesn't do either. The president is not picked by popular vote, and the Congress is not involved. So it doesn't go towards either of the purposes, and all of the context that made it work in his mind aren't relevant. Now I say either get rid of it, or there are things you could do to fix it to make it relevant again, like making we call them delegates now. They didn't call them delegates then. Release all the delegates to vote independently would be one of several steps that you would need. Maybe do the first and second place thing, or the president, vice president, or encourage. The government can't force to be more parties, but there needs to be some sort of social movement to accept multiple parties. As you said, other countries do. In Israel, they have very much a kind of like a parliamentary system where they have coalitions. So they've got, I don't know, a dozen or so different groups, and they team up on an issue. Like, well, I'm on the red team, and the red and the orange and the purple team are all going to agree on this bill against the green and the yellow. Right. They got all these groups, and they team up on certain issues, and then they don't on other ones. And they build a coalition. It's also interesting that other countries that are kind of most similar to us, whether it's Canada or Israel. I guess Israel's wouldn't be an example here, but England is a great example. They don't actually pick their head leader, the head of their government. In England, you vote for your PM, and then the PMs vote for who's going to be prime minister, or your MP, right, or member of parliament. Yeah, your MP. They vote, and so you still have direct democracy in the sense that you're voting for the Labour Party and Leeds, but whoever's the member of parliament there goes to parliament, whether it's let's say the House of Commons, they vote for the prime minister. The people themselves actually don't get a ballot for prime minister in England. So we actually are kind of unique, and that would probably be fine if we had a constitution that really restrained the president, where the president's power and the kind of the freedom that the president had to make such a difference in our lives was minimized, where, well, they're really restrained by the Constitution. So it kind of doesn't even matter who the president is, because we've done such a good job laying out what the government can and can't do. So maybe that's the fix. So it kind of depends on, I think there's ways to fix it if we think it's worth fixing.
Okay. Now we're going to switch up just a little bit. If today's Congress and today's president and Supreme Court had to come up with an entire new legislation of a way to rule a nation, do you think they would come up with a better system than our founding fathers, or the same or a worse system? Like, let's say we got rid of the Bill of Rights. Let's say we got rid of the Constitution, and we gave the Congress of today and the president of today, the Supreme Court, to say, hey, you guys write down what is important, what are unalienable rights, all these things. Do you think they would come up with a better version or a worse version?
I think that they would use the original idea of the Constitution as a template, but they would kind of understand in hindsight that things change, like technology changes. For instance, somebody needs to make a call whether to do about a nuclear bomb that might be on their way, without convening Congress.
Right.
They might, freedom of speech. Well, we have technology that they don't. I'm not saying we shouldn't have freedom of speech. I'm saying it can be unclear to people, or we shouldn't necessarily trust the Supreme Court to always understand the right way it's supposed to be. So I think that the new system would be largely based on the existing Constitution, but they may clear up the language or better prepare for change over time, where it's more clear what to do. People argue all the time. You can get the number one and the number two constitutional scholar in the world together in the same room and they'll disagree. That's why Supreme Courts disagree. I mean, our Supreme Court would disagree with the Supreme Court in the 1950s, disagree with the Supreme Court in the 1880s. So to that end, there is a problem with the Constitution, is that you can't protect it because not everybody agrees. So I think that one thing they would do is realize that and kind of be more clear, or set up steps to solve things that aren't clear, because they can't predict everything. But so I think it would be the same, except it kind of an updated in that sense, kind of a not necessarily choose your own adventure, but like if X, turn to page 72, like if it's a new technology that we hadn't anticipated, turn to page 72, and then there's kind of all these appendices of like, well, what do we do in this situation? And they probably would clear up the language, like let's say like the Second Amendment. What's a well-regulated militia? Well, what we think of what might be a well-regulated militia is going to be different than what they thought in 70. I mean, the word militia, we don't use that outside of that context. Well, that was a common word to them. Regulate, we think now is government control. What did that mean to them? Well, it mean to make regular. So I think we would be more careful to be clear, and maybe we'd have to restate things or state exact examples. Like this means private individuals are allowed to own guns as personal property, and they're you have to in home or in public. You might have to be overly detailed or overly clear what we mean in the way that our founding fathers didn't anticipate being a problem.
Yeah, and you just said the whole regulate meant to make regular. That's something that just like it hits you. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. And it's weird how terminology and words get misconstrued or just changed overall throughout time to fit a certain narrative, to maybe fit a two-party system or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think that would be, I'm 36 years old, and from the Federalist Papers and the original draftings of these to the ratification of the Constitution, I mean, these guys took years to debate and argue over these things and to make it official. So I think that shows a lot of, I don't know, I'm happy they did it because I think we're doing good. But like you said, there are some things that should be that could maybe be updated. But it just, I don't know. It's just exciting.
We could probably get the slavery thing right at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess if we went for the get, we wouldn't have to worry about that one. We would get that right from the get go. I bet you we would. What if we did mess that up again though?
Shoot. Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm. Okay, so before we go to our little Average Joe's After Dark, which is anything goes, so get that top button done even farther. If you could get rid of the Electoral College in 2020, United States, what would you do? Would you get rid of it and go to the popular vote to decide the president in our current system, or do you think it still has its purpose?
I think without making some of those other corrections that we could make to make it make sense again, like Madison wanted it, if you don't do those other things, I think you got to get rid of it because it doesn't do either of them at this point.
Right.
Like
yeah.
I'm not saying there's no merit to it. I'm saying the merit, we're not seeing the merit because we lost the things that he went on to describe why we needed it.
Right. Yeah. Just the things that I've learned from that are, like you said, it's no longer necessary because we don't abide by its initial intent on why it was set up. So, like most things in government, it's just a bunch of red tape that takes longer to explain and longer to do. But yeah, so all right, well, there you go. Eric Mittler decided that the Electoral College should be abolished and we should go with the popular vote. Put it out there. Eric hates the United States Constitution. All right,
What is
so
this, Young
Eric,
Turks?
hey, no, it's not Young Turks. We don't. I mean, what is this? Some kind of a Young Turks edited platform? Old Shank, my man, he's been getting in some hot water. So Eric, we're gonna have some Average Joe's After Dark, and hopefully you can join us. But yes, thank you everybody. We're gonna go to a little of a less. What do you call it, Merle?
I'm gonna have to jump off.
We're just okay. So, Eric, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us, brother, and congratulations on the child. And we will see you soon, brother.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Merle.
Take care, buddy.
All right. See you, Nate.
See you, buddy. So yes, Mr. Eric jumped on to walk us through some of maybe the early beginnings of the Electoral College and why it was sought out. I learned a few things absolutely because I had no idea that the initial votes went to first and second place was the president and the vice president. I had no idea. So you learn something new every day. My mom was right. Try and learn something new every day, Nate. Oh, there it is. There's the music again. Okay. So, yes, thank you for tuning into Average Joe. Stay tuned for Average Joe's After Dark. This is a longer episode, so thank you for staying with us. Hopefully you have. And we will see you in just a few moments.
All right, Nate, you there?
Oh, yeah, PG-13 Average Joe's.
PG-13 Average Joe.
Yeah, so this is a longer episode.
man.
Man, I could talk to Eric all night about
Yeah, he's an
American
interesting
history.
dude for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, man, I had no idea that it was set up originally like that, and hopefully we can get back to the multiple party system
Right.
because can you imagine Hillary and Donald in the White House right now?
That'd be hilarious.
It would be amazing, and it
That would
wouldn't
be
matter if Hillary was
Funny.
the president
So funny.
and Donald was the vice.
Right.
It would just be, man, it would be so funny watching them trying to hang out.
Right.
So yeah, man. Thank you.
Funny.
Shout out to Eric. You can go follow him again. The Frontier Life, Frontiersman Life on Facebook. He has some really cool stuff on there
Right.
and some really cool posts. So
Yeah.
go check him out. So yeah, Merle. What did you think after that? You didn't have a lot of talk or input because you're a great producer and you just mind your business.
That's right. I just doing what I do.
What did you think about that conversation and anything to add on that?
No, it's a good conversation. I liked it. I'm not sure I understand what he says when he talks about Madison and the Electoral College. I definitely don't want a popular vote. Because to me, right, popular vote is what's the word I'm looking for? Mob rule.
Yeah, mob rules. Yep.
mob rule. So, I mean, I think there is some legitimacy, even though we're not meeting the intent. Because, I mean, let's face it, I don't want the yahoos who live in New York City and places like Los Angeles determining, the things that I need to do, because we are disparate, different, people. So I don't know. Interesting. I'm going to chew on that a little bit. But I know I don't want a popular vote. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, I don't think I do either, the way we are currently like set up as a society. But you know what? It would be like, what if the delegates in this next election just went against what they were asked to do?
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
let's get weird, man. Let's see what we can do with it.
Well, there was some discussions about that, right? I mean, there was the Democrats were talking about that when Trump got elected, 3 years ago, about how they would not be surprised if delegates, didn't cast their vote for him. But of course, it never happened. But
right.
I tell you
what,
I
remember the first time I heard about the word delegate was back in 2008 when Ron Paul, when I first learned about him, and there was a campaign online to try and get Ron Paul didn't want his supporters to vote for him. He wanted his supporters to go out and try and become delegates, that if they could get enough delegates in each state, that they could turn around and just, give those votes to Ron Paul. So there was this weird, and that's when I first kind of realized, like, oh, wow, there's so many layers to this thing we called an election.
Right. Yes. Crazy.
Yes.
Oh,
so,
sure.
All right, brother. So what you got going on this weekend? Anything?
I would like to go see Star Wars, but I still haven't seen that yet, so I don't know if that's going to happen or what.
I'm just
right?
going to
I
spoil
know.
it for you and say now what happened.
Don't do that. That would be bad. That would be bad.
Man, you need to go see it. Any new Mandalorian episodes?
I'm done. I've seen them all.
Now, are they doing a season 2?
Oh, I'm sure they are. Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, it was wildly popular. So, have you watched them yet?
Okay. I watched the first episode and
Yep.
I was like, okay, I can get into this. I don't know. When I was a kid, the bounty hunter was such he didn't have any speaking lines.
Bubba
So
Fett?
it's weird. It's weird to see somebody dressed as the bounty hunter, but like discussing things. And I was just like, it took me a while to, I don't know, the Boba Fett, the bounty hunter, growing up was like this mysterious character. So now trying to see, it's just kind of weird. But yeah, I enjoyed the first, so I'm definitely going to get into it, just because there's been too many people have said how good it is.
Right. Yeah,
so
you definitely want to watch it.
When you got that many people talking about how good it is, you got to check it out.
Now, have you been watching Lost in Space? That's season 2 is out on Netflix.
Lost in Space.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I watched season 1.
Are you familiar with the original that was on? It was a half-hour show back, I think it was late 60s, early 70s. Had the robot? No. Oh, wow.
No.
Yeah, that's old school. And they just redid that. Like 2 years ago, they came out with, Netflix put out a Lost in Space season 1, and they just released season 2. So it's kind of cool.
Interesting.
Check it out.
Okay, well, I will have to check that out. Did you see the documentary on Netflix, Don't Bleep with Cats?
No, I haven't. Don't bleep with
So, man, that was crazy. I had no idea that the internet is filled with these people who love cats more than anything and will do anything to pursue justice. But it was a pretty cool documentary because it's not what you think it is. And it kind of takes some weird turns that was kind of dark. But yeah, man, apparently rule 0 of the internet is don't bleep with cats.
Don't bleep with cats.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So,
fun.
all right, brother. Well,
all right, brother.
Man, we've been going for 2 hours.
2 hours. Yeah. Crazy. My butt's hurting. So,
all right. Well, yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Merle.
Yep.
And we will plan on next weekend, sir.
Same
Goodbye,
bad
everybody.
time.
Thank you
All
for
right.
tuning in. And yes, next weekend.
Don't
Goodbye,
forget to,
everybody.
Right. Don't forget to like and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, like and share. Average Joe's voted on our polls. If you have any
Boom.
comments, make sure you leave them. And thank you. You guys are the best.
Yep.
We love
All
you
right.
so much.
Yep. We're out of here. We're fading
right.
to black. See you, buddy. Later.
See you, brother.